Today's video is going to be an update and a condensing of one of my earliest videos, and it's my method to glue up mitered boxes. For this method, you're going to need tape. I'm going to use the green frog tape. You're going to need a straight edge, your box pieces, your base, a little cup that's clean, a paintbrush that is clean. The smaller your box is, the smaller the brush, and some water. Now, I'm using a water-based glue. I'm using Titebond 2, or at least one that can dissolve in water. If you're using something that doesn't dissolve in water, you're going to have to find out whatever that dissolves in order for this to work. I just happen to be using the Titebond 3 or 2 on this one. It works with 3 as well. So either of those glues work for this method. Now, make sure anything that you want to do to the inside, sand, stain, whatever, is done now. It's much easier to do it before it's all together in a box. We're going to set aside these right now. We're going to grab our 4 box sides, tape, and straight edge. We're going to align this just straight. Now, hopefully you've numbered or matched these correctly. We're going to lay them face up. I prefer with the base facing that way because we're eventually going to flip them and fold them. And that way the base is in front of us for us to go that way. So line these up in a line, touching each other, all flush to the straight edge. I am doing a sliding lid box, so my front piece is shorter. But in general, if you're doing a rectangle, I like to have a shorter piece on my right end, and then I flip left to right, connecting a big piece with a small piece. I find it's easier that way to then pull the final tape over. Now that you've got these all lined, you're going to, one by one, place 2 pieces of tape, 3 pieces of tape if you want, over each seam, making sure they stay tight to the bottom and to each other, and go all the way along. And then on your final piece, I like to put the tape on the small piece, but you can do it on that one. And you're going to just kind of leave that hanging over the side. After these are taped, you're going to gently pull this back and flip this over so that the outside faces are now down to the table. We can get rid of this. Now, this step is very important. You need to make sure there is no dust or debris inside of these joints or on these edges. It's your final chance to make sure it's all out of there before we apply any glue. You're now going to need to take your water-soluble glue, some water, paintbrush, and your cup, and we're going to mix at a ratio of about 1 1/4, 1.5 water to 1 glue. We want this closer to water than to glue because the premise here is that end grain sucks up a lot of moisture, which means glue gets sucked in there. And for wood glue to work, you need a surface that has glue on it where the wood meets. We don't want it disappearing into the pores, so we're going to pre-fill the pores. To do that quicker, we want a more liquidy glue so it sucks it right up. You're just going to mix this up until it's all one uniform solution. Now, if you're like me and you're making a sliding box, you have removed this top layer, make a mark of where this top layer, this one ends, and don't put glue above that or else finish will not sink in. Just do this now ahead of time. And we are now just going to take this and start painting it on all the surfaces that we are going to apply glue to. Go along one at a time. Once you get to the end, anywhere that looks dry, apply a little more and keep going until it looks pretty saturated. Some people like to let that fully dry and then glue. I just go straight into the normal glue. But we want to make sure those pores are filled. And if you haven't put enough on, by the time you get to this end will look relatively dry again. So repeat the process. If you are relatively new to this and haven't yet kind of learned how much glue to apply to things, feel free to go ahead and apply some painter's tape to the inside of these corners so that if any squeeze out happens, it doesn't cause a problem with any later internal finish. When you get towards the upper edges, the interior here, because this is so liquidy, it will wick a bit. So when you get close, just apply and just kind of let it sit and press, and it will just pull itself towards the edge. That way you don't accidentally paint any over onto the inside faces. Just going across and pressing and letting it wick itself all the way up there. I just got done applying that end, and I want to show you here how quick it's already dried. Look at that, it's already disappearing. So go back and apply to each of them as you go. Okay, after 2 coats of the watered down glue, I'm ready to move on to my regular glue. I like to paint it on there. I'd rather be able to add more than have to dig out too much if I've applied too much. So I just take the brush, slightly dry it out so that there's not a bunch of water in there when you go to paint this on. And we're just gonna paint this on. Feather it up as you go so that there's a little less towards the top so that when they close, you don't get a ton of squeeze out. but the glue below will squeeze into that area. Make sure you paint everything, but don't leave a ton of it just laying here. And like I said, if you want, you can put painter's tape there to make sure that anything that spills out, you can just peel off later. Once you begin this, you've got the amount of open time that your glue allows. I think that's about 7 minutes for this. So you need to be relatively moving forward as you go so that this does not start to get super tacky before we get all the way done to be able to put the base in. Like I said, I'm feathering my way up towards the top so that I don't have any globs that are sitting at the top there that are gonna squeeze out. As you go along, when you get to the end, come back and look. Some of this glue will also sink into there. And we want to make sure before we close it that we've got glue on the surface of all the wood. It doesn't have to be a ton. It doesn't need to be spilling over or globbing, but we want the surface covered in glue. We're going to come back one time. I see some of this has sunk in. I probably didn't apply enough water. I'm just going to go touch that up. Okay, I'm happy there. I'm going to grab an extra piece of tape for when we do the first closing. If you want to grab a bunch ahead of time and lay them out, go ahead. We're also going to put one final wrap. This is your last chance to make sure there's nothing inside of there, any large pieces of dust or paintbrush hairs. And we're just going to go ahead and we're going to fold this up. I like to go ahead and place the base in the second one, whichever one you're folding, the second one. Then you're going to bring it up, meet, push over, go down, and then you will just come up and meet there. Oh, I forgot to put tape on that, didn't I? Yes, I did. I go back and I apply one more piece to each of these before a big final wrap. And I pull pretty hard on that when I'm pulling it down. I want these to bring them together. A lot of this is going to depend how good your cuts are. They are going to close better if you are closer to 45 degrees. It's as simple as that. All right, and then we're going to do one final big wrap. You don't have to do this. I just like that certainty. I'm doing it pretty darn hard, as if I was taping a box together. I want as much tension as I can get on this tape, and that's going to do it. If you see any squeeze out, you can either clean it up now or you can wait. You can either do the straw technique. If I have any, I don't. I'm pretty lucky here. I just get a chisel later on and I just pick it off. I find it's easier. It doesn't smear it. When you smear it, it's a nightmare. And that's going to do it for us today. This is a 24-hour sit time for me. I do not like to take this off any less than that. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave them down in the comments. Thank you for joining me. Have a good one.